Hi, in this video we're going to look at some of the graphics types tools that are contained in Google Slides, and we're going to look at those not so much for making presentations, but how to use them for alternate reasons, for creating graphics that might be used in different types of activities. Keep in mind that the way that Slides works with images is pretty standard to the way a lot of other applications with image editing capability work. So what you're learning here, you can just apply in other environments such as Google Draw, but also in lots of non-Google products. If you're working with images, things like ordering or grouping or cropping tend to work in a pretty similar way among a lot of different products. So this can be useful outside of the Google Slide environment as well. Okay, the objective in this particular project is to create a scene out of graphics and then include a minor amount of text over the top. So I'm not going to need multiple slides, I'll just need the one, and I'm really not going to need these text boxes here. So once I start a presentation, the first thing that I would do is simply delete those so as not to be a distraction. Now, let's look at our environment a little bit before we start, see if we can make it a little easier to work in this environment for this particular project. Okay, first of all, normally when you start a new Google Slide presentation, the view will show speaker notes as it does down here. And this just gives you a smaller area to work with on your screen. So if you're good with a smaller area, that's fine, but if you'd like a little more space, one way to get it is to come to View and uncheck the toggle for Show Speaker Notes, and it's going to give us a little bigger area. The next thing is, because we're going to be doing a lot of manipulation with images, we may put images on the slide and stretch them out because we want a portion of that image larger. And we don't even want to use the whole image. They may overflow the boundaries of the slide, and that can be a little confusing to work in. And so one way to deal with that is to mark the corners of the slide. We can do this by going to View, Guides, and Show Guides. And by default, what it should give you is one vertical and one horizontal guide, dividing the slide into 4 equal spaces. Okay, so this is good for centering, but it doesn't really help me with the corners and that overflow problem. So what I can do is I can just click on the vertical ruler and drag out, and I'm dragging this extra guide right to the edge of the slide. I'll drag another one out to this edge. I'll drag a horizontal guide down from the top, and I'll drag another horizontal guide from the top. Now generally these may be useful, these centering guides here tell you exactly what the center of the slide is, but if they're not for some reason, if that's really not an issue with this particular project, just drag them off the screen and there'll be less clutter on the screen. Now all I've got is the boundaries. If you ever needed them back, you can go to View Guides, and if you add a vertical guide after you've removed it, it's going to put it right in the center for you. And so let me get rid of it because I don't think I'm going to need it here. Okay, I'm going to start looking for graphics. In my particular image here, I want to take up the whole slide, and it is going to be the layer for the superhero, the communicator. So one method I might use to search for images would be to come Insert Image and search from the web. It gives me nice direct access to the web, and Communicator lives up in the mountains in a secluded area. So I'm going to search for log wall, like a log cabin. And I got some things I see right away that I could use. I could use these vertical planks. I could use these. Oh, I think I like this. So I'm going to click on the image and insert it. Notice that my image search box goes away when I choose to use that method. Now once my image is on the slide, I have a couple of choices. I can grab it and move it like this. So now I'm getting it, right up in the corner. Or I can use my arrow keys. Once it's selected, I can use the arrow keys on a keyboard, which is a very convenient way to get it to lock right into the grid, right into a specific location. The image is not quite big enough for what I want, so I can grab it and I can stretch it. Whenever you're working with images, if you take the image, if you grab it from a mid box, something like halfway up the vertical, not a corner, but midway, or the horizontal, you're going to distort the image. So I can grab this and drag it out like this. And in this particular case, it really doesn't do any damage. In other cases, it will start to make the image look a little wonky. So if you do want the image to remain in proportion, you always grab it from a corner, and then I can drag it out. Now, if I don't have room to drag it, I can always do something like this. I can drag it half off the screen, grab it by a corner so I can, make it any size I want, and then move it back into the location. So I'm along this top border and I'm along the left border, but you can see I'm overlapping on the right side and the bottom side. And notice also that I have it positioned so there's a very narrow board at the bottom. I'm going to try to fix that. And I'm a little concerned that the color is dark as well. So let's try to deal with all three of those things. If you do go to Format Options while a picture is selected, you have a bunch of choices. You can rotate it, although you can just also grab it and spin it. The position, you can more easily move around just by clicking and dragging. You do have a Recolor option. I don't find this useful all the time, but you can see that you can apply different pre-made filters to this image, which might be helpful to you, at some time. It's good to at least know that they're there. I'm going to go to no recolor and leave it at the moment. The other option you have is for these adjustments. We'll look at transparency later, but for right now, I can adjust the quality of the image through the brightness or through the contrast. And if you go too far away from that center point, it tends to distort the image a little bit, but you can normally do some minor tweaks in here. So yeah, maybe like that. Let me check Recolor one more time, see if there's anything in here that's going to work for me. Nope, I don't think so. Okay, so I've recolored the image a bit. Let me close that tool. I said that I didn't want this narrow board, so I'm going to click on it. I'm going to use my up arrow and just position it so that when this is cropped, it's going to expose a full board at the bottom. And I think that's about it for now. So let me try File, Download, and then I'm going to get a couple of options here, two of which I may be interested in, or possibly three, but in this case two, either the JPEG or the PNG file. PNG file tends to be a higher quality file. JPEG tends to have a smaller image, smaller file size rather. And since I'm not really concerned with a small file size on this particular project, I'm going to click the PNG file. It's going to offer to download it for me, and I'm going to call this V1 for version 1. Now I could reinsert that smaller image, or I'm just going to delete this one, and I'm going to go to, click on the slide, slide, where are we? Change background, and then I can choose the image here. A bunch of different ways to choose it. I am going to upload it directly. And then that would become the background for my slide. Now there are some advantages and there are some disadvantages to using that method, so I'm going to undo it for a second, and I'm going to just insert that image as a v1 dot, there it is, as an image. And I should be able to pretty easily get that to cover my slide. Now, a little trick for you to know. When you're resizing an image, you'll notice it's going to want to jump. It's going to want to jump in increments. And if you want to prevent that from happening, like if it gets bigger than you want or you can't get it quite as big as you want, hold down the Alt key on your keyboard. And that will allow you to tune that a little more finely. Okay, now previously we looked for images by saying insert image from the web, but we're going to try a different tool. We're going to go to Tools Explorer, and you can see I've done this search before, but when you do come in Let me just blank that out. When you first come in and do a search, it's going to bring you to this page where you can find lots of things. You'll find websites, it'll search your drive, it'll also search for images. So I am going to say, I'm just going to search for flooring, see what I get. If I go to the Images tab, I'm going to see it over here. And I can look here for anything that might be interesting to me. I actually kind of like part of this picture. So let's see what we can do with that. I'm going to insert it. Notice that it comes with this link. So I want to click here to remove the link. One of the reasons I like this Tools Explorer version is that the sidebar doesn't go away. So if I'm looking for a series of pictures, which I will be in a little while, I don't have to keep reopening that. I can just come back and search again. For right now, I'm going to get rid of it. We're going to demonstrate another tool. Now, turns out that I could have used this for my whole image, but perhaps I only want the flooring piece. So a way to get a lesser portion of this would be to click on it, and you'll find this crop image tool. Notice that the border changes and we get these flat black lines. If you grab one of those, I missed it. I don't want that upper one. I want that lower one. I want to make sure I'm on this black thing right there. There you go. So now I can just eliminate part of the picture, and I can do that from the left, the right, the top, or the bottom. Looks a little funny, but as soon as I click off, it looks good. I'm going to use my arrow key. I'm going to get myself over to the side here. And I think this image will be okay if I drag it out. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I like that. Okay, I actually think that maybe I want a little more wall space, so I'm going to click on this and just move it down so my floor takes up less space. Now I could use that crop tool to pull this back up if this bothers me, but I'm just going to work with it knowing that this is the bottom of my slide, and if that becomes a problem, I'll just output it and re-import it again, as that ping file. Okay, let's start moving along here. So I am going to go to Tools, Explore, and I'm going to search for more items to put in here, but this time I'm going to start with the word transparent. And that's going to get me an image where a portion of that image is see-through. And so this one might be very interesting. Ah, good. When it's called up, you can see these alternating checkerboards. And that's showing you the part of the image that will allow another image to show through. And this is perfect because I like these windows, and yet even this area in the window is going to show through. So I'm going to insert that. I get my window, it's a little large, I'll remove the link, there you go. And now I'm going to grab a corner and I'm going to resize it a little bit. Make it a little smaller. Okay, perhaps I want double windows. In order to do that, I just need to copy and paste them. Move them into position next to each other. But to prevent it, if I want to move these later, I don't want to have to select both of them and realign them. So in these programs, you can also group things once you have them. So I'm going to click on the one, hold down my control key, click on the other, and then under Arrange, you have this group option, and now these things will move as one. As a matter of fact, if I copied and pasted them again, I would be getting the full double image. Okay. Let's undo that, or just delete that one. The other thing I'm going to get for the moment is a transparent door. See if I can get something that would fit my cabin a little bit. Or maybe not. Maybe I want something, exotic. Could try this. Cabin door. Kind of like that one. Okay, I can see that it could have trouble matching around the outside, but I might be able to work with that. So I'll put it in, I'll remove this, I'll resize it. For the moment, I'm going to close the window so I have a little more room to work. Try to make everything a little smaller here. I think I did a great job with my proportions. And then here's where I can come back to this crop tool. And we'll see if that's going to work for this image. You know, it looks like I have trouble getting it the first time. This is not going to be perfect because the image is at a little bit of an angle, but it may not be noticeable by the time I'm done. Okay, I think that's fine. I'm going to take my windows. I need to bring them down a little bit in size. Now, notice when I grab it by the corner now, I can distort the image. It'll allow me to make it flat or long, and that would be fine if I wanted that. But if there's something you want to avoid, when you click on the corner, hold the Shift key, and that's going to keep the proportions proportionate. Okay, I'm going to put my windows over here. Now my windows are just looking out at wood, which is not appropriate. So I think what I'll do here is I will go back to my search, and I'm going to search for mountains. Images. Let's find a nice one. Oh, I like this one. And insert that one in. Remove the link. I think I'm gonna pull down the size a little bit so the mountains look a little further away. And now I want them to show through the window. And the way that you do this is whenever images are put into a graphic, you know, we're familiar with X and Y, you know, how wide and how tall something is. But when you put images in, there's something called a Z order, and that's depth, how they're stacked on top of each other. So think of it like each image gets a number. And number 1 is at the bottom, and number 2 will show on top of that, and number 3 will cover that one. So what we can do here is when this is clicked, we can say arrange, order, and if I say send to back, it becomes the very bottom of the pile. But if I say send backwards, it goes back one layer. So let me demonstrate here. I think the last thing I put in here was my door. So if I were to say arrange, send backwards, oh, now the door masks it, but the windows are still further back in that stack. So I can repeatedly use send back. Oh, that's bad. My wall is somehow in front of that. So let's take the wall here. And I think I might have actually said send to back instead of send backwards. Ah, that's what I want. So now I've got them stacked. So potentially my mountains can show through the window. And everything else will look great. The only problem here is that obviously I don't want those mountains all over my wall, so I would go back to my crop tool at this point. Now note that you can also grab a crop from a corner. That'll save me a little bit of time. Okay, now I've got the mountains outside. I have to decide what other things I like in my picture. So I want to include some things here that relate to these superhero powers. One of them is flight. So I think I will look for transparent cape. Oop, not cap. Cape. What kind of cape would I like? Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this. I think I'll go with this guy. I'll insert that. Remove the link. Resize it appropriately. This particular, I put it right by the door because you're going to want that cape as you go out the door. Another thing that the superhero can do is he can manipulate time. So I'm going to look for transparent clocks. Okay. Get rid of that. Now, what would be really nice is if I could change the time on multiple clocks. And I guess I'm going to have to make a decision here. If I wanted to do something like that, that's not going to happen so easy. The time's going to look like it's in the same place. So I could either go to the trouble of getting multiple clocks here, set to different times, try to get them, similarly sized. Now, there's a potential danger. Potential danger of transparent images is not only was the outside of that clock transparent, but the inside was as well. So if I wanted to use this one, I certainly could do that. I would do something along the lines of inserting a shape. And actually, that would be the wrong shape. The obvious shape here would be a circle. Okay, I'm not thinking too clearly about that one. And it's already got a color. I could change that color. It's just a shape. And then I would take the arrange order and send that one layer backwards. And look at that. Now I have another clock. And you know what? I'm going to cancel out of that because you guys get the idea. You don't, if I wanted to perfect this picture, it would be great. Now, I just resized that, and I can't get at the image underneath the circle because I've put it underneath the clock. So if I want to make that edit at this point, I'm going to move it out of the way. I'm probably going to click this and bring it all the way to the front temporarily until I can see that I've got the size right. Then I can arrange and send it backwards. Okay, my clock's looking good again. At this point, I held Control click while the back one was still selected. So now I've selected the front and back image. And now if I group them, I don't have to worry so much about my clock anymore. Okay? And I missed it by a little bit, but I'm not going to worry about it for the moment. I'm going to copy and paste these clocks. As I said, if I was really into this, I would probably get individual ones or try to manipulate the time on one of them or something. But for now, for demonstration purposes, I'll just do that. Okay, lots of other things I could put in here. Transparent table. It looks like it's pretty bare here. I'd look around and find one that I wanted, but for right now, I'll just insert that one. A little too modern for my cabin, I think. Now, other things you can do with images. I like that table, but I don't like the way that it's oriented. So I have a couple of choices here. I certainly can grab this and see if spinning it helps me. It doesn't in this case. It just kind of makes it look awkward. So what I'll do instead is I think I will go to Arrange and Rotate and flip it horizontally. I just like it better that way. So you can flip things horizontally or vertically. Keep in mind this is the bottom of my slide. Everything down here is going to get cut off. So my table is actually probably a little big, and I'm going to have to let it come a little bit off of the screen in my final image. You get the idea. I can do a lot more with this. I can do more to support my character, make the image nice, but I'm not going to make this video any longer than it is. Now, the last thing I could do is that I can lay text over the top of this. So let's take a look at that. I can insert a text box. Just type in there. Okay. As with all text, I can just pick something that's appropriate. Usually for something like that, it's going to be a heavy text, a thick text. I can increase its size. I could mess with its alignment within the box, center it. Doesn't really matter with an invisible background too much. Other things that you can do with this, if you wanted to make this look like an actual sign, I would in fact center it. And then I would come to this text box. Right now I'm selected so that I can edit the text, but if I move up and select with the four-sided arrow, I've now got the object itself. And what I can do is I can put a black border around it. I can put a fill color on it. I can, even with my fill color, I can go to a gradient. I have some choices for that. Make it look a little more interesting. Maybe not that much more interesting. I can take my border and make that thicker. I could make it different. And a sign shouldn't look like that. It should have a solid border on it, but just all sorts of things I can do with the shapes. So if I'm thinking in terms of that, I can put another box around here. I can make its border black and thick, and then take this image and send it backwards a level. And now I've kind of combined the two borders. I just need to see if I can get a hold of it and size it appropriately. Let's take a quick look at how to do a similar thing with Wordart. So I'm going to leave the frame, but I'm going to delete the actual content that I had on that frame. Maybe we can take this and take its fill color and make it a little more interesting. By the way, you can pick from any of these colors. There's also the color for those of you who are very artistic and very good. You can use these to get almost an infinite variety of colors. Okay, so it's a matter of using these two sliders. And then you can even add some transparency in there, but we'll look at that in a minute. So, okay, not my best work for sure, but let's look at what we can do with some Wordart. So I'm going to insert Wordart. Putting the name of the superhero was probably a bad idea. That should be a secret. So I'm going to call this the Calm Cabin. I'll name the cabin instead. Okay. I can do a variety of different things with this. I can obviously resize it. Just grab it and drag it until it fits my space a little better. Now I can move it with my arrow keys. I can change the font. So that's not the best font, but impact is better. If I slide down here in the bottom, I'm going to get more choices. Let's get something a little, permanent marker. That looks interesting. Okay, so I've got that. I can, I could bold it. I could italicize it. Okay, again, I'm holding down my Alt key right now because I want to position that, and using my arrow keys wasn't giving me enough latitude to do that. I couldn't get it just where I wanted. So the Calm Cabin, I'm going to click on that Wordart. Typical things that you can do, you've got a fill color here. So let's go with, I don't know. No, that's terrible. Okay, let's just go with a deep color here. You've got a border color that you can use. Okay, we're just going to be a little garish here. I can also impact the border thickness at the same time. This is available to me, although probably not a good choice to use in a lot of cases. So the other things that you can do with Wordart, though, that are kind of neat is if you go to Format Options, okay, it's got your size and position. You certainly could rotate it, but you could do that more easily by grabbing it here. But it gives you the opportunity to add a drop shadow or a reflection. And that's available with various different graphic elements, but let's look at it here. So let's say that I want, okay, just so we can see it clearly at this point, a very bright yellow on the drop shadow. Okay, I can change its angle, so I can move that. I don't know if, let's see, let me make it more pronounced. Let me actually just take this out here where we can see it a little better. I'll make it big for the moment. Okay, you've got an angle, so if you notice, let me make the transparency. Okay, now you can see it. Very dark, very pronounced. And let me give it a color that doesn't match anything else. Bright red. There it is. So there's your shadow, there's your outline, there's your fill color. Now the distance is basically saying how far from the text itself it will sit. So now I've raised the distance so you can really see it. And as I move the angle around, it's over to the right, over to the left. There you go. You know, this is getting it upper right, more lower left in here. So let me bring my distance. Now we can see it pretty clearly there. There's also a radius blur. You can see that it's not very sharp. If I bring it all the way to the left, it becomes extremely sharp. If I bring it all the way to the right, it becomes extremely diffuse. So I can play with this to kind of get the look that I would like. I'll bring that a little tighter in. And I think I'm going to make that black just to make it pop off the page a little bit. So the things that you can work with, and again, I could even take that and make it semi-transparent. We'll see how it softens it. It's allowing some of the image underneath to bleed through. Let me resize that a bit. See if we can get it positioned reasonably. Okay, you can play around with that as much as you'd like. The features that we've looked at in this video and features that are, as I said in the beginning, are extremely common among image editing applications and those applications that support some degree of image editing would be, well, let's see. This is kind of unique, a unique trick to say PowerPoint or to Google Slides, is this download as an image. So you can use that to your advantage to actually produce an image file from something you're creating in your presentation software. We looked at using guides. We looked at inserting images and getting them from the computer or searching for them on the web. You could also get them from various other locations. You could even, use get a screen, either a screen capture, or you could use your webcam to take a snapshot of something. More than likely that's yourself or something in your immediate environment. Text box. We've looked at briefly about how to use different shapes to get effects that you want. We looked at mostly rectangles and circles, but there are some arrows available here. There are callouts that can be cute in an image if you want somebody to be talking. And then a couple of mathematical symbols, although you can use some of these brackets sometimes creatively. We've looked at word art. We didn't look at the line tool, but the line tool is very similar but a little more limited than the shape tool. So I'll leave that to your imagination if you ever need, a curved line, a thin line, an arrow, something like that. You can create that here as well. We did a lot of our work in this Arrange tab, and this is something you should be aware of. Okay, this is where you can order or stack things. 4 options. Send it all the way to the back, all the way to the front, or step it one level at a time with bring forward and send backwards. That terminology is very common. We could have chosen to center something on the page if we wanted. We didn't. The group and ungroup, very, very useful. And a tool that we didn't look at, let me just do that now for you quick before we finish. I'm going to take this image, something I could have done previously, and let me just throw a clock here. And I'll make it a little smaller. Okay, I'm going to copy that clock and I'm going to paste it a couple of times. Just randomly. Here you go. And if I want to do some alignment on those, I can select them all, and I'm doing that with, again, with my control key and clicking. But now that they're selected, if I go under arrange, I could align them along a center line. Okay, so that's a little time saver for me instead of trying to get things, doing it myself and moving back and forth. Another option I can have under arrange is to distribute them. So I'm going to distribute them vertically. And now they're equally spaced top to bottom. So these are just a time saver. You can align left, center, right, top, middle, bottom, and you can distribute either horizontally or vertically. Okay, the only other thing that we looked at here, which is worth knowing about, not just in this environment, but other environments and something to teach your students, is that in several of the Google products, you have this nice Explore tool, and that can be a convenient way to get out to the internet to get what you need. Okay, that's final step now. Now that I've got this all done, I want to get it as an image. Now, of course, I want to keep this Google Slides file, because if I ever want to come back here, I've done a bit of work in here. If I ever want to come back, I can come back into here and make edits, add things, delete things, etc. But what I do want to do is I also want to get this download as a PNG file again. And I'm going to call this final layer. And if I were to open that, you can see it just opens as an image. So I've saved it as an image. I still have my copy that I can work with later. This video went a bit longer than I had intended it to go, but I hope you find some of it useful.